Well, welcome, guys. I'm so glad you made it at 10:30. And so just to kind of give you like a rundown of the day and what we're going to be doing. So we're going to have our self-editing part 1, which I'm going to be sharing with you guys in just a minute. And then Jenny's going to take her turn with part 2 because her specialty is copy editing and proofreading, which is really groovy. Hi, welcome. Come on in. We have name tags over there, and please have a seat wherever you like. I'm Ashley, by the way. Okay, so after that, we'll break for lunch, and then come back and finish up with the editing software, and then finding an editor, and then we'll have a nice little time of Q&A at the very end. Okay. All right, I'm stoked that you guys are here, and we're gonna get started with once I get my computer to flip over to the right thing. All right. Are you working from the slides? Be nice. Yesterday there was like an entire lag. It took like 30 seconds between when I moved my mouse and then it did it on the screen. It was driving me crazy. Okay, so the part 1 of this self-editing talk or little workshop that we're going to do, what I'm going to try to cover is looking at getting a process for editing in general. What did you guys think of when you think of editing? Let's just start with that.
Going through and fixing grammatical errors, but also outline errors.
Mm-hmm.
I never went back to that.
I needed to get that done, right? Yeah, so what about you, Alice? What did you think?
I know there's all different kinds, and I'm trying to just basically what's wrong with it, when you need to fix it up to make it fit the pattern that it should be for a particular market or a particular category.
Absolutely, yeah. I know a lot of us, when I first started, I would approach my novels with, okay, let me fix the grammatical stuff and polish my sentences. And that's really not the best route to go, because by the end of that, I'm like, okay, I did it. But then there's potholes. And I'm like, I didn't fix this stuff. And then I would get so bogged down with the frustrations of all of that. And so I went on a hunt and tried, read some books. I'm like, oh, there are people that actually teach this. I have a master's degree in English, and I never got to learn this kind of stuff, right? And so, yes. Can you tell that's a pet peeve? Okay. So in any case, so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm hoping to teach you guys more of a framework. This will be high level. You will probably get some ideas based on my process, how you guys can integrate this. But doing it in a certain order and a process will really help to make things a little bit more effective. And you hopefully will not get as bogged down as you would have otherwise. All right. So I like pictures of, oh man, and it's going to make me do, hold on, let me switch the view. Be nice to me. Okay. So I like to have pictures of the, come on. Oh, you're going to be mean. Hold on just a second. Sorry, guys. This is what happened to me yesterday. Of how things are supposed to work. I tend to be a little bit visual in that sense. So one of the books that I was reading, it was actually, you can get it on Audible. It's a masterclass series, and I can't remember it offhand. But it gave the analogy of sculpting, and I think she's perfectly, it really illustrates well how we should treat writing and the editing process. Okay. So let's dive in. Hopefully my volume will not be as loud as it just was. But the music is lovely. Okay. So at this point in our writing process, this is pretty much where we're at, where we're drafting, you're pre-writing and drafting, and you're kind of figuring out where you're at with your novel. Okay. For those of you guys who did NaNoWriMo, this is pretty much where your manuscript is. If you've not gone through the editing process at all, this is pretty much what it looks like. Does it look like much? But we know it's a face, right? I mean, we've got a few strokes of genius here. Come on now. Oh, see, this is what I'm telling you it was doing. Okay, see how that lag happened? Oh, that makes me mad. But this is pretty much where we're all at with like a nano project or any type of novel that you've not worked on yet, okay? Does it make sense to start polishing and doing grammar right now? Would it make sense for this artist to go through and do all this? No, okay? And that's the downfall of what a lot of our processes were, okay? Hopefully before today. After today, it'll be better. But after you've drafted, we're going to start with developmental editing. Now, I've kind of called these based on the types of editors that you actually can hire. Okay, so developmental editing is where you're looking at big picture ideas. You're looking at your novel as a whole in very specific areas like structure, plot type of stuff, character arc, and also pacing are the main ones we're going to cover today. And you want to tackle those first and get your structure in place before you move on to narrower types of editing, okay? Now, I will give you a caveat, and I know Jenny will do this probably too. No editors can agree on what everything is called. We all have different names for everything, but I tried to get the general consensus on a lot of these. So just bear that in mind when you do your own research. Yes, there's a lot of disagreement on what various things are called. But when you hire a developmental editor, that's pretty much what they're going to look at as well, okay? All right. So as you can see, I'm all the way down on mute, by the way. But as you can see, what she's doing here is much like what you do in your developmental edit. You are getting the structure in place first, okay? You are wanting to make sure that everything is structurally in place, nice and lined up, all that kind of stuff before you move on. She doesn't even have eyeballs yet, okay? That's pretty much where your story is at by the time that you are, working on your developmental edit. All right, now she's got some eyeballs. Again, does this make sense at this point to start polishing your work and trying to put like eyebrows and eyelashes on this lady? No, it's not. So don't go that route. Go this way first, okay? And take care of the big stuff. Okay, look, she's got some nice ears on now. Now we're getting into the more details, right? We're getting into more details. So this is where we go into substantive edits. And this is another type of editor that you can look for. Not as popular because most folks like smash developmental and substantive in. But for me, it's a little bit difficult to focus on all of that stuff. It's a lot. Okay, so substantive edits are where you drill down into the scene. You're looking for the same stuff as in your developmental edit, but at the scene level instead. We're stepping down, we're making things a lot more narrow. And notice that she's putting more clay on, she's taking stuff away. This is the same as in your process. You're going to be adding chapters, adding scenes, taking those things away. It's the same type of process. Okay? And even here, have you noticed she's missing something major? She's missing her hair. Have you ever come across this where you get through your story and you're like, holy crap, I'm missing an entire giant section that I need. Okay, same thing here. Okay, now she's getting hair. Okay, now by this point, does she have all her structure in place? Here, she has all her structure in place, right? She's got her major features in, all of that is all taken care of, okay? So does it make sense that she can start putting in those finer details now? Absolutely. I'm literally on mute. Oh, it's YouTube. Okay. So as you can see, she's starting to put in those finer details. That's when you start copy editing or line editing. You start cleaning up your work. This is your first polishing stage. And then after that, notice she's just refining everything at this point. She's really starting to give it that first polish until she goes in and she starts smoothing everything out, which is proofreading. Okay, that's your proofreading stage. And once you have all that in place, look how gorgeous she is. And that's what your novels are going to look like. Yes. Okay, this is what your novels are going to look like. Okay, so now, and it turns into masterpieces, which I know that's what your books are going to look like. Okay. So, does this make sense, our overall process? We're going to go from big edits to little edits, pretty much, and go in that order. Okay, any questions so far? Let me know if I'm going too fast, because I tend to do that. Okay. Also, these slides are available in a little folder. I'll show you guys those during lunch. That way you know where they're at. Okay, so I'm all about cooking and stuff like that lately, especially cookie recipes, because I'm trying to make healthy cookie recipes. So that's my analogy. All right, so overall recipe. After you've drafted, you want to give your book 1 month where you don't know anything about it. It's in a dark corner in your computer or in your trunk or somewhere. You go, you have fun, you read other books, you might write a different one. You go start a new hobby. Forget that thing for at least a month. Okay, why? And you're not allowed to answer.
You need space.
Mm-hmm. Okay. After you read your book, do you still know everything that's going on in your book? Yeah, pretty much. Like, you know the plot is what I'm getting at. You know what your characters are doing. But when you give it that space, when you forget that junk and throw it somewhere else in the corner, you come to it with fresh eyes. Objectivity in editing is your best friend. And so you're going to continually tell me or hear me say, give yourself distance. Set it aside, put it away, forget it, at least a month. Now, this varies between editing stages, depending on what you need, but make sure to let it rest. Okay, and I don't speak French, so forgive me, but mise en place, have you guys heard of this in cooking? No?
Rest in place.
Yes. So this is where, when you're cooking, my husband is the cook in the family. Yeah, so when you gather your pots, your pans, all of your ingredients, you dice up your onions, you do all that stuff before you cook. That's what this is.
Oh, preparation.
It's your prep. All right, so here it is. Okay, so I would strongly urge you for your first edit to spiral bind your books. Okay, so this is my first draft of my current novel Stitchers. It's 100. At this point, it was 113,000 words. But I bound it at Staples or Home Depot or something. No, not Home Depot. What's that other one? Home Office thing. Office Depot. There you go. There was some Depot in there, right? In any case, so I bound it. It was like $7 to do this. And how nice did it feel for me to pick this up and be like, this is my book, That's like an extra part. It was like $7 to do this. Has a clear plastic cover, a black cover on the back, and it's spiral bound.
Printing it too?
Well, printing it, I printed it at home on my own paper.
Because I did that and it was like $30.
Oh yeah, if you print it there, it is mad expensive. Don't do that. But yeah, this is double-sided. As you can tell, I have not really marked up this part, and I will tell you mine a little bit. But overall, this is what it looked like when I first started editing. And this was my copy editing stage version. Yeah. So, okay. So spiral bind your books because you need to get it in a different format. If you're not going to do it, it's a little bit more difficult because your eyes, editing-wise, especially for writers, it's easier to do it on a different format, okay? And I'll get more into that later. Also, what I used for this process, I gathered sticky notes. And I had at least one sticky note color for each editing stage. And then I had a special sticky note color for major story beats. So like Alice was saying, oh wait, Val, that's right. Sorry, I just remembered, I placed your name. So as Alice said, making sure that it fits the structure that you're looking for, your particular genre. If you're using Save the Cats or something along those lines, which is what I usually use, then to have those major beats, that's because later on you're going to use these stickies and organize them. And speaking as someone who did not do this the first time around, make your life easier. Just color code your stuff. Color code. All right. And then plan for treats. So Nano folks, at the end of November, we went to Lofty Pursuits and celebrated our victory, or whatever our goal meeting was. Do the same thing for yourself. This is going to be hard. This is where the bulk of writing happens. Your first draft was for you. These consecutive edits are for your readers. Okay? So make sure you plan for treats.
So the sticky notes, you use them in one edit?
Yeah, I used them for my, actually, that's a great question because I'm going to talk about that next. So my stickies, I use it for my developmental and my substantive edits because they're mobile. I can put them up on the wall and actually visually see where my issues are, and I can organize them. So like if I have similar issues, I can group those together. Does that make sense? Versus text markup. Text markup is when you go in and your copy editing, and you just write it up. Now, it is much easier when you're having big edits because you're going to have to start moving things around anyhow. You know, when you're at the polishing stage, this is pretty much data entry, right? You're just going through and you're just changing your stuff. Big edits are not like that. You are having to move chapters, scenes around, all that kind of jazz. It's easier to put it on something external. Plus, it helps you focus. Because I don't know about you, and this is why I told you to have a sticky note for each editing stage. I have the bad issue of looking at grammar. And so having that sticky note, because that's just the way my brain works, having that sticky note and saying, do I really want to write this? Is this actually a big issue or is it a smaller issue? Can this wait for later or do I need to address this now? And having that choice helped me to focus on the task at hand. Does that make sense? All right, and then after you have your stickies all in place, you will have an editing plan. Now, it might look a little bit different for your copy editing. It's going to be a little bit more, data entry-like, but knowing your plan of attack is going to help you, especially in your big edits. Okay, and you're, like I said, you're going to repeat these for these major stages. Everybody clear so far? No muddy water? Okay. And I wish that I could make this bigger. You guys do have a copy of this in the folder that I was telling you about, so you can look and reference this. But this is your roadmap. Okay, you start out with you've written your novel, and then you gave it lots of distance, which is wonderful. And then you're going to start your developmental edit. Once you've implemented those changes, you got it nice, the big structure in place, forget it again. I'm going to tell you to forget it a lot, okay? And then once you've given yourself that distance, start on your substantive edits. That's what we're going to talk about too in a little bit, where you drill down to the scene. And then at this point, once you've implemented those substantive changes, this is where you can introduce your book, and this is where I do it, to beta readers. Because does it make sense to get through the whole thing and polish it, make it look nice and pretty, send it to a beta reader, and what are they going to say? Which happened to me? Giant plot holes. You missed this. And I ended up finding entire POVs that I needed to cut because my book was 113,000 words. But I caught it early, so it was a quicker edit the second time around. Does that make sense? Okay. So while it's at beta, you usually have a little bit of distance there. And then you can start line editing. Of course, you're going to implement changes that your beta suggested before you line edit, but then you start your line editing and your copy editing, and then you're going to put it down and hopefully send it to a copy editor and hire one if you're self-pubbing. And then after you get it back and implement those changes from your copy editor, you're going to proof it. Okay. Does that make sense so far? This is our roadmap. Okay, now, this will be our practice, so you can be thinking about this as we move through. But there are two main things that you kind of need to know before you can start editing. Because these two things pretty much hang when you have the hard decisions of, oh my gosh, do I cut this thing? Which I had to do. It's going to help you it's going to be the tiebreaker, if you will. Okay? So the first thing that you're going to want to think about is your purpose or your vibe. Why did you write this book? What really grabbed a hold of you with this book? Or what was the vibe? What was the feel you were wanting your readers to get out of this? Okay, and so for my book, Stitchers, I had to really drill into this because I had to cut an entire POV that took over my main character. And so mine is I wanted to show a mom who was a hero, who could still have kids and a job and have adventures. Okay? And my second POV took away from that. And so I had to make the hard choice based on what I really wanted readers to get out of it. Okay? Now the next thing is the audience. And when I say audience, I don't mean like ages 25 to whatever. Women or men and women, who have this type of education. No, that's all fine and good. And to know that is great. You're going to need that for marketing. But you need to know that like in the specific. Can you edit something considering like even everybody in this room? Can you edit trying to please everybody in this room and meet the needs of everybody in this room?
You have to be very general.
Yeah. So it's much more helpful to almost create an audience character, if you will. That way you can think, okay, for me, her name is Isabel. And she is a mom. She works. She's got a degree. And she doesn't have a lot of time in between, taking care of kids, household, and doing career and all that kind of stuff. And she looks for escapist fiction. And so she wants something that's going to be fun, but still is going to, have a little heft to it sometimes, but that she could go take to, read at the park while she's watching her kids play or something. Okay? So do you see how she's easier to edit for than the four of you guys? Right? That's much easier. Okay? So this will be your homework in just a minute, but just think about it as we go. Okay. Another note, major edits. What I mean by that is changing your POV, so from first to third, or vice versa, removing entire subplots and POVs. That's what I mean by major edits. Test it out first. And so I changed mine from third to first, and I took a couple of sample chapters and did that. And I changed it from third to first, and it was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this in the first place? That was really dumb. But I didn't arrive at that until I did some other major subplot cuts, right? So test it out first. That way, if you hate it, you've lost like half a day of edit rather than your entire novel. And also make a new document to keep your original safe. Okay? Make sense?
Where do you put all these documents? Because I recently found out a drive to a certain amount you need to start paying.
Yeah. Okay, so I use Scrivener. Does anybody else use Scrivener? No. Okay, so.
I have the other one you had mentioned.
The other one? I can't remember.
The one that you said was like Grammarly.
Oh, you mean Pro Writing Aid?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's a different software. We'll get into that one. So for Scrivener, it allows me to hide everything in Dropbox, and so far the files are pretty small, or small enough that I've got about 8 or 9 projects in there. But then I back up to my computer. Does that make sense? So it just depends. Like if I don't know, I would say try to back up to your computer, but leave it on the cloud. Like leave your main one on the cloud is what I would do, and it would depend on what you're trying to put all into like Google Drive, because just Word files or Google Doc files, they should not be very big. But if you're holding a whole bunch of them, then you would need to kind of see what you could pull off, because that's what I do. Whenever I'm done with an editing stage, I will pull that off of Dropbox and leave it on my main computer. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right, so now we get to dive into developmental editing. All right, the first one you're going to want to check out is your character arc. And what I love about talking about structure, because this kind of goes hand in hand when you work with like something like Save the Cat, is because she really focuses on how the character develops in terms of plot. Like they go hand in hand. So, questions you're going to ask as you're reading through are going to be, where is it? Does your character actually transform, or do they stay stagnant? Now, this transformation can be an upward transformation, or it could be a downward one into villainy, which is always fun. This is one that you need to look out for, and it's hard to sometimes see. Your beta readers will spot this for you. Is if you can easily identify your character's need, want, and flaw. When we did the Preptober thing, we talked about knowing this ahead of time. Even as a pantser, knowing this is super helpful. And it helps you drive your plot to be more character-based. If you can't, then what do you need a little sticky note. I don't even know. I'm in chapter 3, and I don't know what my character wants. That kind of thing. Are they active or are they passive? I know some folks are like, well, my character just, is, how do I put this? I've had a lot of, when I beta read for folks, the readers can see the passivity, but the author couldn't. Does that make sense? And so we're like, she lets everything happen to her, and she has no agency. No way. Like, no, look at this. Seriously. Betas are really good for this, but try your best to find that, okay? If you can't, that's what betas are for. All right. Any questions on that one?
If they are passive, is that bad?
Say that again.
If their main character is passive, is that bad?
Yeah, unless she's growing out of the passivity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you've got a character who is a doormat, that's not fun for readers.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next is the overall structure of your novel. So any of the structural, the snowflake thing, Save the Cat, the hero's journey, the heroine's journey, whatever you guys like, you're going to do a reverse outline on it. Even if you are a plotter, okay? Go ahead and do it because you probably missed something, okay? And it's really helpful to go ahead and do this. So as you're going through and you're reading, you're looking for those major story beats. I did this and realized my secondary character, my secondary POV, had all the beats. And my primary character did not, which really sucked, and I had to go fix that. Okay? But having that visual of all the sticky notes all on one side told me, okay, that's something I got to fix.
What do you mean reverse edit?
Reverse outline is when you don't outline before you write the novel. You outline after you've written the novel. So a lot of plotters will do it ahead of time. And hybrid pantser people like me, just like, oh yes, I kind of know what's going on and let's go. And then at the end we have to do the outline in reverse.
You actually do the outline?
Yeah.
Because I just put like bullet points.
That's an outline.
Just 3 things.
This happened and this happened and this happened and this happened. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't need to have Roman numerals and all that kind of, no, please, bullet point that junk. Just so you know what all happens, okay? You need to pay attention to which beats are present and which ones are missing because those are ones that you need to incorporate. And this should be done, if you're doing something like story, Save the Cat, then the beat sheets should be done for each POV character. Okay.
Can you talk more about beats? I have been trying to understand what that is.
Okay.
And I see all kinds of systems.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about Save the Cat story beats?
Heard what?
Like the Save the Cat Writes a Novel. Have you heard of that book? Okay, it's a really great book. And her name escapes me right now, but in any case, when I think of it, I'll let you know. But what she did is there was another guy, Jack Schneider, I believe was his name, and hey, come on in, have a seat, anywhere you like. So he went and analyzed a bunch of movies, and saw what the typical plot points people were hitting without even knowing, like the similar ones that were going across most of the movies, right? And so Jessica Brody, there it is, she's the one that she did that in novel form. Okay, so she translated that. So a story beat is something that needs to happen in a novel. So for example, you have usually your opening scene or your opening image where you see your character before all the fun and games start happening, right? And then you'll have an inciting incident or a catalyst that changes your character's world, and they have to act now. Whether they want to or not is a whole different story, okay? And then you go through and you'll have your midpoint, which is, the middle point of your novel where something else needs to happen.
So would there be a change within one conversation?
Yeah, those beats can vary in length. So like the opening image, it can be like a chapter and a half long, so to speak. Whereas the catalyst can happen in a single scene where something happens and it changes it. It can kind of happen over a period of time. But usually they vary in length. Does that make a little bit of sense?
Yeah, I saw one plan for one of the movie animated movies like Cars. I can't remember what company that was, but they said their general plan is that first there's this, and then something happens, and then something else happens, and then we'll ride together, and then that's the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in that same vein. So there are major plot points, like I said, that have to happen. Like at the end, you need to have like the part where the dark night of the soul, where everything goes bad and your character feels like crap, and then all the stuff is going wrong, and then you turn into the third act, if you will, because it does follow the 3-act structure, and then it turns around and they're like, okay, I'm going to go fight whatever this thing is that I have to conquer. And those are all major beats that need to happen that's all major beats that happen within a normal story. Does that make sense? A little bit? A little. Well, if you want to talk more about it, let me know, like during lunch or something. Okay? And then we can kind of.
Look at the story structure. Like
Story
there's
The Freitag pyramid?
image, and it has the 5 points, and it goes like this, and then it has a little triangle. So the inciting incident, there's a climax in the middle.
Yeah, but you can
Those
have
are the
like
beats.
a 3 structured plan for
Yeah.
that, or a 5 structured.
Well, whichever one fits your novel.
Yeah, you have to figure out. It's good to play around and to see which ones you like. Does that make sense? But there are lots of them. There's even a snowflake one. I don't know much about that one. I mean, there's so many out there. But you want to see which major plot points you're missing, your plot holes. Okay, here's our last one, pacing. And I'm going to shut this door a little bit. So pacing is, the big question you're asking is, where is the lag? Those tiles make really loud noises. Parts go by. Okay, so you want to looking for where's the lag. Pretty much, as you're reading, and this is wherever I put a sticky note. I would put a sticky note here. Pay attention to where you start to doze off. Okay, if you find yourself skipping chapter or paragraphs, and you're like, okay, skim down to the bottom. Where's my dialogue next? Put a sticky note there. You don't have to tell yourself how to fix it, but put one there. That way you know that it's time to fix that. Or are you exhausted? Have you gotten to this point where you're like, oh my gosh, something's got to give. There's too much happening here. It's going too fast. I just need to, I need a break. Put a note there. That way, future you, when you're doing your editing plan, can fix that later. Okay? Usually, you have a few problem areas that usually when you're skipping paragraphs, it's because you're info dumping. I don't know, speculative fiction person here, fantasy. So I'm usually info dumping and doing a lot of world stuff that I don't have to, that I could integrate better. So that's one area to look at. Talking about structural stuff, pacing at the middle. Look at your middle. Make sure it's not sagging and really, riding low, so to speak. And are things going too fast? Perhaps you have a whole bunch of dialogue and not enough description about what's happening in the setting and the scene, what the characters even look like. I'm very guilty of that. My books always come across very lean, full of plot and all sorts of stuff, but then I have to blow them up to make them, actually legible, so to speak. Okay. Are we clear what we're looking for with our developmental? Yeah. Okay, so here are some do's and don'ts. Do focus only on your big picture items. Okay? And definitely do a color special sticky for your major beats. It will save you headache. And if you are not going to be printing out your novel and spiral binding it like I suggested, at least change your font. And if you're doing the spiral binding, do it anyhow because it's fun. It makes it look different, okay? It gives your eyes something new to latch onto. And lastly, reward yourself, please. This is hard, okay? This is where real writing happens. I feel like, the litmus test for hobbyists versus writers who are, is the editing part. This is the hard stuff, okay? Although there are freaks like me who kind of enjoy this part. Okay, don't look at it for a month, okay? Give yourself the distance you need to be objective, okay? Please don't look at it. And don't look at grammar or prose, okay? Do not do that. Turn off your grammar checker, okay? You have permission to let your novel be as messy as possible, okay? Because you will fix that later. You don't need to fix it now because it's wasted time, right? I mean, you're going to fix something that you're ultimately possibly going to cut or combine and rework, so just wait. Don't waste your time. Okay, so this is what my stickies would look like. I would have, in the middle, I would have the issue or the observation, and I would just jot down a note. If I had an idea for how to fix it as I'm going, I might plop that in there, but that's not big. That's future me. Editing plan me is going to do that. And this was a mess up on my end. Talk about, School of Hard Knocks. Put that on there. Put your location on there. Your page numbers, of course, are going to change, but eventually when you get your editing plan and your outline going, you will be adding these little sticky notes to that plan, and you will then know where to put them instead of having a giant board full of sticky notes that you don't know where they go. Tell me how I know. Okay. And this is what my editing plan looked like, or this is what my board looked like. So you didn't see my novel, even though if you go on my Insta page, you'll see it. It looked like a colorful porcupine because all that junk was sticking out of my big giant spiral bound book. But after that, I took them and I put them all up on my boards, and I even got cork boards because I thought that would be super decorative, right? They sucked, but they served their purpose, okay? And I had even used thumbtacks to keep, there were so many stickies here, I'd use thumbtacks to keep them all stuck up there. But I separated them out into my developmental edit, my substantive edit, so my scene level edits, my line editing, and then I had world building, setting, character list, that kind of jazz. Anybody else go through the novel and misspell names 50 times, and you're like, oh, yeah, okay, you know what I'm getting at? That's what that's for. Here are my beats. And notice all these over here for my main character are, this is missing, and this is missing. That was what this one was. So that's what mine looked like. To give you a little bit of an idea of how you can organize yours. You can do yours in any organization file way that you want to, but this is what worked for me. And notice that my line editing was pretty small. I did all of these, and then I threw all that junk away because I was going to change it all. I realized looking at the mammoth amount of stuff that I just couldn't even, and I threw it away. But it helped OCD me, like my grammarian, it helped me to just get it out. Okay. Now, once, okay, so who uses Word versus Scrivener? Word. Use Scrivener? Okay. So Word, you can do this with a TOC, but you need headings. Okay, so if you're working in one giant file, that's when that'll work. If you're using Scrivener, when you compile, it will give you a scene list, a scene outline list, and you don't have to do that junk. See, these are my sticky notes. This says developmental edit, but that's because I was too lazy to change my title. This is really my substantive edit. But what I did was I made notes of where I was supposed to. You guys can look at this if you're so inclined. But this is how I organized it. So you get yourself an outline, print out your TOC, print out your outline from Scrivener, and then you just make notes from all those stickies of where it goes. That's why you have the location, see? Again, tell me how I know. And does this make sense so far, how you're kind of organizing things? All right, then when you're ready to implement said plan, please make a new file. Don't screw yourself over and keep your original as backup. Yeah. Tell me how I know. School of Hard Knocks. All right. So, hopefully I'm not going over too far because I still got to do substantive, which goes quicker. All of the lead up will make more sense. All right, so this is time to practice. Now, I know I told you guys were needing to think about stuff as we were kind of going along. And I'm not going to actually make you try to practice a developmental edit on the spot. No, I won't make you do that. I think you guys kind of understand what you're looking for, and as you get into it, it becomes more intuitive as you're diving into it. But what I'm going to make you do for the next few minutes is I'm going to have you consider your purpose or your vibe of your book. Okay? And then I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about your audience. And I would encourage you guys to write it down. Anywhere, on your computer, on your paper, write it down. Okay, so once again, your purpose or your vibe is the why. It's the why for your book. Why did you write this? What snatched your attention about it? What got you excited about it? What's the vibe? What are you going for with your novel?
I missed the last bit that you said.
So we're working on like the vibe that you're trying to get for your novel, or the purpose, the why you wrote your book. And the reason why I'm wanting you to consider that is because in the near future, once you start editing, you're going to have to make hard cuts and hard decisions. And this is your test, the thing upon which you are basing your decision. Does this cut serve my purpose or the vibe that I'm going for? Or do I need to keep it? Does it enhance what I'm trying to do with my novel? Okay, so nobody wants to share? No sharing today? No? Okay, I know. Why you write your books can kind of be personal. But just know, when you guys come to the hard decision of what you're going to do, remember why you wrote it and what you're wanting your reader to get out of it, okay, and your audience. So I always think about, what do I want Isabel to get out of my book, okay? Okay, substantive. Now this is going to look similar, but we're changing our focus. So substantive, again, we're talking about major revision process here, but it's a step down from your developmental. This is a narrow focus. Now, again, I'll tell you that most of the time, editors who are developmental, like they kind of house this under substantive. It goes underneath developmental, but I'm sorry, this is a whole bunch of stuff to look at, all in one pass. Don't do that to yourself. Just break it apart, and trust me, because after you do your developmental, it's going to need to get cleaned up, and that's what partly you're doing here. Okay, but when you do your substantive pass through your book, you're going to be looking, again, at your character's art. But it's not on the whole novel, okay? It's only at the scene. That's all you're looking at. You're just looking at the scenes. Does this scene cause my character to grow or regress in some way? Has my character gained knowledge? Or, fun little thing, or is your reader finding out something your character doesn't know? That's a nice tension builder. Okay. How does this scene serve my character? Okay. These are what you're going to be focusing on in the scene. Okay. Now, of course, you're going to be looking at like logistics too. Yeah, go ahead. Main character. Sorry, I get to in there and I keep thinking main character all the time, and I'm just like MC. Yeah, I'm talking about your major characters here, not like necessarily the ones that get POVs and that sort of thing. We know what we're looking for. Groovy. Oh, you little rascal! Come on now, be nice to me. Okay. Then we're going to look at structure. Does your scene support your overall plot? So are your scene memorable? And I'm going to give you a little hint. This is going to be your practice homework in just a few minutes. Okay, are your scenes memorable? Are you going to remember these bad boys? Are they pulling their weight in terms of plot? Are they advancing your plot? Or are they weighting it down? Is there a conflict? And I have this problem all the time. I'm like, oh, look at this cool thing that happened between these friends. And what's the point if there's no conflict, if it's not accomplishing something? Okay. There we go. All right. So you need to pay attention to those scenes that are not memorable. Why do you think that is? I'm just going to quiz you guys. Why do you think you need to pay attention to scenes that are not memorable?
Readers might stop reading or lose interest.
Yeah. If you forget it, will they? And you wrote it. And I wrote it. Okay, same problems that you usually find, except it's on a smaller scale. So if you're seeing giant paragraphs of text, or let's say you've got dialogue and you interject this giant thing, like, how are you doing today? He asked as he walked through the house and said something else to somebody else. Oh, I'm fine. Like, you've already forgotten what the question was, right? As a reader, look for that. Do you have too much dialogue? Another one. That's my problem.
I have a question because I feel like this has been happening recently because I never really finished my first draft because I had to go back and redo half of it. But sometimes I feel like I have scenes because I feel like something has to happen in the scene for the next scene, but I feel like I'm just having that scene happen because that one thing has to happen, so I feel like it's boring. But I needed that thing to happen, so they're having this conversation, but it's like this big. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if it has to happen, then you can make it pull double duty, and your scene should pull double duty. I'm going to give you an example of like the index cards that I used to help me out with this, and that might help you. But let me know if it doesn't. So hang on to it, and then go from there. If it doesn't help, then we'll keep going. Okay. So we know what we're looking for with pacing. All right, do's and don'ts. So do focus only on your scene level. Your big structure should be there. Okay, remember the picture of the head, the bust that we saw sculpted. All of that is on there, so you're just hanging the rest of these bits on top of it. You're only looking at the bits you need to, because you got the skeleton ready. All right. Now, one of the things you definitely want to do is you're going to have some janky stuff happening from your developmental edit. So make sure you smooth out the transitions between your scenes. This was an issue that I had, and I think everybody else does. This is true across fiction and nonfiction. You start switching up your stuff, make sure you smooth out those transitions. Make a scene outline from memory. And then reward yourself, please, because this is hard. And don't like go bake you a bunch of cookies or something like that, unless they're really healthy. Get you that book that you've been wanting to read. Go read it. Go take a kickboxing class or something. Something fun. Okay, go hike somewhere. Do something fun, because your brain's going to explode. Okay. okay? And then do let, after you've gotten it through this phase, do let some betas get a hold of your stuff, okay? I cannot stress this enough. This saved me like months of editing because I did this. It broke my heart because they found more holes that I didn't see, but at least that was a quicker, I got to do my developmental and my substantive edits a lot faster because there was fewer things to do, okay? All right. Do you guys know how to find beta readers? Yeah. Oh, good. Okay, like quick caveat. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump out here. Scribophile is a great place. It is a website where you can go and everybody like post their work. You have to read other work in order to get credits to get yours critiqued. However, that's super helpful because in critiquing other people's stuff, you're like, oh my gosh, I do this. Why do I do this? I do the same thing. And then it helps you learn a lot. So it's wonderful. So just
What's the name of it?
Scribophile.
Scripto.
Scribophile. And I believe it's free, but there is a paid version that gets you extra credits. So that's a great place if you don't have anybody. Another place is a writing association, like the Tallahassee Writers Association. They have critique groups, so when you join them, you can say, hey, I want to be part of a critique group, and then you're in like Flynn, okay? Let's see, where else? Also, there's genre-specific associations as well that you can get into. Like there's romance, there's stuff for romance, there's stuff for, yeah. And also, if you need betas, I just remember this, there's all sorts of Facebook groups for ARC readers, like advanced copy readers, and betas. Like you can tell them, hey, I just need a beta, I don't need an ARC reader. And some of them are actually just readers and they like to just read people's stuff, which is amazing. And you don't have to necessarily always read their stuff in return, so that's another option. And also, you guys are all here for a reason, right? I'm not going to facilitate anything, but I'm just saying, if you're here, then you probably wouldn't be interested in critique programs. Just saying. Okay. All right. So once again, don't look at it. Go have fun, in between edits. Please don't. Give yourself as much objectivity as you can, and don't look at your grammar. Your grammar checker should still be off at this point. Okay. Come on, little jobby. Oh, here we go. Here's the fun part. All right. Now, this is what the index cards look like. And I've got some out there if you guys, we're going to practice in a minute. Because you guys are going to get to do some of this in a little bit, just for fun and giggles. But, so you're going to want a scene title. That's usually what I start out with, okay? These index cards, you're going to do one for every scene. You're going to need, if you have multiple POVs, you want to make sure you remember who your POV is. And then, of course, if you don't know these things, then you can add them later. Okay? And if you don't remember them, that tells you something, which we're going to go over in a minute. All right, this is what happens in this scene, and this is very simple. This is just one sentence, okay? And I've highlighted my characters because I don't have enough space and I write too big. This scene is where Hiri has lunch with her 3 friends, and then there are the 3 friends, and the payoff or reveals, okay? Your scene should do something. It should do more than one thing, really. Should do more than one thing. So there are 3 things. So this is foreshadowing, which I had to go back in and add, okay? That happens with her. And then it's a touching scene. This is the main thing, that you get to see how close they are. But then there's also the tension here, okay? So this scene is doing 3 different things. Does that make sense about how a scene pulls its weight? It has to do multiple things. Plus it helps your novel not be this big versus this big. Okay? Yes. This makes me feel so good. Okay. Does that make sense? What goes into a scene card? Now, you may not remember all of this from memory, but that can be, you can add these things as you go along and as you fix your stuff. Does that make sense? Okay, let me see what else I had to add on Okay, your editing plan. All right, so you're going to compare your scene index cards to what your actual outline is. Okay? So, what we're going to do in a minute, and I'm just letting you know, we're going to practice this a little bit. You guys are going to make a scene list. Okay? And you're going to, from memory of your book. When was the last time you guys looked at your book? Be real. Oh, you rat. That's okay. All right. When was the last time you read yours or looked at it? Tuesday. Okay. We'll see how it goes.
Like December.
Yes. Okay. That's good. You got lots of nice. Okay. Good stuff. Alice, when was the last time you looked at yours?
This morning.
Oh, man. Y'all. Okay. So distance is your friend. But we are going to try this anyhow in just a little bit. So you are going to create from memory your scene list, as many as you can remember. And then, and now this is for substantives. We're going to pretend for today's purposes that you've done your developmental edit and that you've got your structure in place, okay, and you've let it rest. And then you're going to, from memory, you're going to remember what your scenes are. You're going to write them down. And then you get to like test yourself. Isn't this fun? Where you do your TOC or you do your outline on Scrivener and you're going to say what is missing and what's there. Okay? And then you're going to make a plan about the scenes that are missing from your memory. Okay? So you're going to have to look and say, okay, highlight the ones that were missing and say, okay, I got to work on these. And you're going to cut, combine, rework, or add accordingly. Okay? Now, do you know why? Now you understand why I'm saying you're going to have hard decisions to make. Okay? Which is why you want to know why you're doing this sucker in the first place. Okay? All right. And then, just like I did, like I showed you here, this was my substantive. Okay? Same thing. You're going to, let me remove my stickies. You guys could have looked under the stickies. There's nothing that. All right, you see my bullet list? This is what's got to happen in it. This is what I have to change. Okay? So this is what your thing is going to look like. Your editing plan. Or something similar. It doesn't have to.
So that was your developmental?
No, so I got lazy and didn't rename my thing. I just named it Developmental 2.
That means the thick one was your developmental edit?
Yeah, this was my novel pre-developmental edit.
And then, so you did that, you edited developmentally, and then that was what came out?
No. So, yeah, that's a great question. So I did not go back in and make another spiral bind copy. I went in and I read back through it on the computer, and because I had quite a bit of notes that I could go back and do. But you can do that, definitely. You can do that. Mainly because I did this whole thing of going back by memory. And then when I printed it, I didn't have to do it again. I could just go in and compare my editing plan to what I had in there. And another little tip too is if you're in Scrivener, you can, your little comment field for each of your scenes or your chapters. You could maybe do this with Word and a comment, but I put the notes from here into my chapter that I was working on. That way I had it in two places, and if I lost those or my kids destroyed them, then I still had access. And if I was somewhere else and didn't have my plan with me, like at a cafe or something, then I had them.
I'm going to ask you about printing that out again. Did you take the file to Office Depot?
You can. I will say it will be much more expensive, just because they're going to charge you for paper and the printing. So if you have a printer at home, I would encourage you to do it at home. And if you have, and that's printed back, front and back, that big giant monstrosity.
So what did you take them?
I took them that stack of paper right there and gave it to them for half a day and then came back and it was done. Or I think they actually, some of them sometimes will do it while you wait if they're not too busy.
So you printed it out and you took it to them just to copy?
No, just to spiral.
Oh,
This will make, I mean, can you imagine walking around trying to, keep all these papers in place? This is mainly for my peace of mind, not to have like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it was this many, 429 pages. You know what I mean? This keeps everything together, and you're not having to worry about, oh my gosh, I just lost this paper that I just edited. It's all together.
Printers here, too.
Oh, yeah.
For any of the pastel,
I don't
like,
know.
paper.
You might. But does that make sense? Okay. So I told you what you're going to be practicing on. Do we know? All right, I want you guys to take a second, write it down on paper. If you want to do it on paper, also, another little handy thing, if you want to, so what you would do normally is you would make your list. What I would do is I would make my list of my scenes, and then I would automatically come over with an index card so that our friends at home will be able to see this later. So I would make my list because I'm old school on paper, and then I would take an index card and I would write up those scenes that I remembered. That way they're fresh in my memory. And then I would go compare it to what I've got in my TOC or in my Scrivener file. Okay, so for right now, let's just make our list. What do you remember?